Part 23. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 221. Chapter 221 Is that the opposite? Sulayun thought for a while, then called a soldier from the Mingfu, whispered a few words to him, and the man left immediately. What is Miss Su doing? When Rugui saw that she was still unwilling to give up, and the anger that she had suppressed was instantly ignited again, Daoyui just lost her child and is still very weak. How can she have the energy to accompany Miss Su to fool around? Hearing this, Daoyui immediately looked weak and unsteady, as if she was about to faint in the next moment. When Rugui was frightened and quickly held her tightly in her arms to support her. Sulayun looked at Daoyui's pretentiousness and sneered in her heart. When she spoke again, she couldn't help but with a bit of sarcasm. Yesterday, Qiang Shuang almost killed 2 people. No one in the whole house felt sorry for her. Even the newborn the day after I gave birth to a child, there was no one around to take care of me, so I had to do everything myself. And Mr. Wen is here to protect his aunt who has had a miscarriage until her eyes narrow. What? Is a miscarriage more harmful to the body than childbirth? How can this matter be discussed? Exactly, Sulayun interrupted Wen Rugui's words and said sarcastically with a smile on his face, how can a concubine be compared to a wretched wife? It's just a bright future, how can there be a warm and fragrant nephrite to hold her comfortably? Wen Rugui shuddered and heard the implication of her words. She pulled Taorui out of her arms and said, you go back to the room and rest. You don't need to watch here. I will definitely give you justice. I won't scream you have been wronged in vain. Sulayun was so sharp-tongued and could provoke Wen Rugui with just a few words. She changed her attitude towards him. How could Taorui dare to leave even half a step away? What she was afraid of was that if she entered the house with her front foot, Qin Qiang Shuang, that bitch, would be released from the yard with her rear foot. She had to be under Wen Rugui's nose all the time, so that he could take a good look at how she was being bullied by his first wife from a scholarly family. She shook her head softly, Miss Su is right. My sister has survived such a dangerous situation. What does it matter if I just gave birth to a miscarriage? You can't kill anyone, but I want to accompany you to solve the matter, figure it out and give my sister justice. Seeing that she was so sensible, Wen Rugui felt sorry for her even more. He helped her sit on the chair where he had just been sitting and comforted her, I will solve it as soon as possible. After saying that, he looked at Nanny Lu and kicked her impatiently, didn't you see that your master is wearing thin clothes? It's still cold in the morning, why don't you know how to pick up some clothes for your master? You don't have the eyesight to see. Thing. While saying this last sentence, Wen Rugui glanced at Sulayun. Grandma Zhang was immediately unhappy and said angrily, it's really something that you can't see. Our young lady is still standing, but some people have sat down first. Compared to the young lady of the Qin family who comes from a serious family, it's really far off. Fortunately, people from a small family know that there are no rules. If Mr. Wen wins the first prize and lets such a person take care of the house, it will really make people laugh. Taorui's had just landed on the chair. Seeing Wen Rugui's face gloomy, she didn't know whether to sit or stand. She secretly hates that the slaves around Sulayun are as annoying as her master. She didn't get up either, and looked at Wen Rugui intently, since Miss Su is standing, I should also stand, it doesn't matter. No, Miss Daoyui is a noble lady. If something goes wrong, we will have to blame it on our young lady again. It's better to sit down. Nanny Zhang rolled her eyes and said. Miss Su, is this how your palace teaches its slaves? Wen Rugui was furious and started talking indiscriminately, how dare a slave yell at his master? It's disrespectful. Where is the master? Sulayun widened his eyes in confusion, his gaze fell on Daoyui's face, and then he seemed to suddenly realize, is Mr. Wen talking about the person next to you? In a family like ours, my aunt is just a capable person. he is just a slave serving his master, not a master. Tao Rui's bloodless face suddenly turned red. She was the only person sitting in the whole yard, and she suddenly felt on pins and needles. When Rugui looked at Suleun with a sinister look, it seems that Miss Su came here specifically to embarrass Tao Rui and vent her anger on Qin Qiangshuang's behalf. It's hard for a master to be a slave, Suleun was surprised. I've never heard of such a truth. But she changed the topic. What happened today is indeed strange. I am here just to find out the real murderer. Otherwise, if I kill a loyal servant today, I will feel that the world is peaceful. If the murderer continues to wait for opportunities to harm others tomorrow, it will not be beautiful. Other than Qin Qiangshuang, who else in this house would embarrass Tao Rui like this? When Rugui roared angrily. Aunt Lu also chimed in angrily, that's right, our aunt is well raised on weekdays and is not used to getting headaches and fever. If she hadn't gotten pregnant, the lady and the eldest son had given me some birds' nests as gifts. How could she have let anyone eat them? Where is the opportunity? It's fine that the eldest grandma doesn't like my aunt, but how can she also harm the eldest son's flesh and blood? Is it possible that she can't give birth to a son and won't allow others to get pregnant? Suleun immediately shouted angrily, you are a dog slave who failed to take good care of your mistress and actually poured dirty water on your mistress. This matter has not yet been investigated clearly, but you have categorically convicted your mistress of the crime. The Wen family raised good judge. Come here, slap me. Mother Zhang has long disliked her and has repeatedly tried to seduce her young lady. Today's incident involving the Qin family's young lady is definitely something that this servant has nothing to do with. No one can escape unscathed. The people in the Suhao mansion wanted to slap her, so naturally Nanny Lu didn't dare to hide. She took a few hard slaps, and her face became swollen. She looked at Tao Rui as if asking for help. Tao Rui looked away, twisting the handkerchief tightly and feeling very tangled in her heart. Finally, she stood up and knelt down in front of Wen Rugui, crying and begging, Uncle, please, let Miss Su's people stop. Aunt Lu has been serving me with all her heart, and she has long since I treat you like your own flesh and blood. Seeing that I have suffered such a big crime today, I am afraid that I lost my head before I hit my sister. I beg you, for the sake of her savior, please spare her this time. Bar. When Rugui was so distressed that she quickly pulled her up, held her in her arms and coaxed her. She stared at Suleun with a pair of peach blossom eyes. Miss Su has shown enough prestige. Are you satisfied this time? Can you let me go? Mr. Wen, are you telling the truth? When did I show off my authority? Haven't I been watching you, a pair of wild mandarin ducks, show off your authority from the time I came in until now? The two people who were scolded blushed and turned white, and they couldn't think of anything to say to refute. Suleun continued, I heard that Mr. Wen intends to enter Dali Temple or the Ministry of Punishment. Did I hear wrongly? With your level of judging cases, how can you have the dignity to enter these two places? You, Wen Rugui gritted his teeth. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 222. Chapter 222 Exposed. Suleun raised his hand and pressed it down. Don't rush to refute, first listen to what I said to see if it's right. According to what Mr. Wen just said, a slave who kills a higher status master for his own master can be forgiven? Why is it that the maid next to Kaiyutong, a higher status master, drugged a lower status master for her own master? Does he deserve to be beaten to death with a stick? She pointed at Chiu Tong, who had been helped up by others. Chiu Tong was covered in blood on the ground, and looked at Tao Rui with a half-smile. Miss Tao Rui is so kind, why didn't Chiu Tong do it when she was beaten? How are you going to convince Mr. Wen with your rhetoric? If you can't convince him, you can cry, make trouble, and hang yourself. Once you cry, Mr. Wen will become soft-hearted, So it's not that difficult after all, right? If you persuade Mr. Wen, the Wen family will be able to prosper and everything will be prosperous, killing two birds with one stone. Why not do it? Tao Rui opened her mouth and found that Suleun had finished all the words alone, and she couldn't find the words to defend herself. Wen Rugui also suppressed her blush and felt a little disgusted when she looked at Tao Rui again. If you really lose the official position that you are about to get because of this matter, it will really be more than worth the gain. Miss, the medicine is here. The soldier in Soigny's strong suit fell to the ground, lowered his head, and brought up what he had in his hand. Suleun then said, "Mommy, stop it." Mother Zhang shook her hand and snorted secretly. She got an advantage out of this dog slave. Now that you feel comfortable talking, it's time to get down to business. Suleun asked Wen Rugui, "Please, Master Wen, ask someone to bring a stove so that I can open your eyes." Mama Liu's hand touching her face shook and she looked at Tao Rui. Wen Rugui turned to Su Gun and said, "Go and get ready. Once you find out everything, please ask Miss Su to leave immediately." Su Guan responded quickly and hurried to the backyard. The items were packed up quickly. Suleun asked Lian Xian to hand the baggage to Yuzhong, and asked him to take 2 coins of return in person. He also asked Grandma Lu to take the same amount of birds' nests as the bowl of birds' nest porridge. He also asked the little maid who cooked porridge in the kitchen that Mother Lu mentioned earlier to cook the porridge herself. People all over the yard were looking at this pot of porridge eagerly, trying to see what it was all about. After the little maid put the white dough back into the pot with trembling hands, with just a cup of tea, the white pot of bird's nest porridge turned red. Everyone was in an uproar. Everyone's eyes immediately fell on Tao Rui. Mama Lu looked at the pot of increasingly red water, and gradually felt that something was wrong. The little maid was so frightened that her face turned pale, and she knelt on the ground with a cry, not daring to speak, and just shed tears. Suleun scolded with a straight face, "Open your dog eyes and take a closer look. These 2 bowls of bird's nest are the same. The boiled bowl of white bird's nest has turned red. Do you dare to drink it?" Mama Lu was so frightened that her 2 limbs trembled, her eyes turned rapidly, trying to think of a countermeasure. At this time, Lian Xian came in, bowed and said, "Miss, Rong Wenpo and Divine Dr. Wang are here." "You're here just in time." Suleun looked at Wen Rugui, who was also shocked. "Mr. Wang is the shopkeeper of Baiko Hall, so I just invited him to ask who the person who went to Baiko Hall to buy return yesterday was." Hearing this, Hulu shivered with fright and his face turned ashen. "Who can't see that he looks guilty?" Tao Rui and Aunt Lu looked at each other, hiding the fear in their eyes. Seeing Dr. Wang come in, Suleun pointed at Hulu and asked him, "I wonder if you have seen this person before." "Hulu? Why are you here?" Dr. Wang frowned and explained to Suleun, "This is the waiter in my medical clinic. Occasionally, he helps pack medicine when he is too busy. Yesterday, he said that he had something to do at home and asked for a day off. Why are you here at the Wen family?" In other words, he was not in the drug store yesterday. Wen Rugui's eyes widened in shock. Physician Wang nodded, "He is indeed not here. I wonder why he appears here." Wen Rugui said nothing with a cold face. Suleun sneered, "Of course I am here to be a witness." She asked Dr. Wang again, "Sir, were you in the store yesterday?" "Yes." Divine Dr. Wang nodded. "Then have you ever seen Kai Yutong from Grandma Wen's courtyard and bought the medicine return?" Suleun asked. Divine Dr. Wang shook his head, "I will remember it once I have met her once. If it is true that the maid next to Grandma Su went to buy Katatang, I will definitely remember it, and I will have to ask Grandma about her situation. On the other hand, someone did buy this return, but it was a middle-aged woman with an arrogant attitude and generous spending. She was a guest entertained in Zongxia at the time, and she gave him a lot of hard-earned money." "Then do you remember what that person looks like?" Wen Rugui asked quickly. Suleun added, "Sir, Let's see if the person who bought the medicine is in this yard. Upon hearing this, Grandma Lu lowered her head suddenly and walked slowly to Daoyui, pretending to take care of her, but in fact her back was to Dr. Wang. Seeing that the atmosphere was so solemn, divine Dr. Wang knew that there might be some secret in it, so he did not waste any time. A pair of energetic eagle eyes passed over the faces of everyone, and finally his eyes fell on Nanny Lu. This man's body shape looks very similar to the man who bought medicine yesterday, but I don't know if that man's face matches. Sulayun had been looking at it from the side, and he knew it immediately when he saw it. She asked Nanny Lu loudly, "Nanny Lu, Mr. Wen is looking for the person who bought the medicine yesterday." Everyone raised their heads to ask Dr. Wang to see. "Why did you just turn your back? Is there something wrong in your heart?" Mama Lu secretly scolded Sulayun for being nosy, and thought that her face might have been swollen into a pig's head now, and the old man would not be able to tell anything. Moreover, when she went there yesterday, she did not see the miracle Dr. Wang, so she turned around confidently, "Old slave, I am not afraid of the shadows. I was just worried that my aunt would be blown by the wind, so I helped her tie her cloak." "Miss Su, why can't you wait so long?" Unexpectedly, as soon as she turned around, divine Dr. Wang said, "That's her. Although her face is so swollen that you can't see her true appearance, but her body shape and bone structure can't deceive anyone. In addition, her voice is the same, so I won't admit her mistake." They say that divine Dr. Wang is an upright person, but today it seems that he is also a person who follows people's influence. Aunt Lu gritted her teeth and said, "When Miss Su named me, you said that person was me. If she named our eldest son, can you also tell me his name?" Mama Lu knew in her heart that she couldn't admit it, otherwise with the way Miss Su was protecting that Qin Kaiang Shuang like a calf, Daoyui would definitely not be able to survive. Divine Dr. Wang has been honest and upright throughout his life. He never received such an insult. He immediately turned black and said, "What a slap in the face. God is watching what you do. It's not that you won't repay it. The time has not yet come." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 223. Chapter 223 Reporting Poisoning. Tao Rui also didn't expect that Nanny Lu went to Baikatang to buy the medicine. Now that the shopkeeper has come to testify, where can she go and put aside the relationship? Her eyes were rolling around, and she had a plan in mind. She pulled Wen Rugui's sleeve and said sadly, "Uncle, I'm afraid there is some misunderstanding. This Aunt Lu was bought by you to serve me, and how could he harm me? Maybe the miracle Dr. Wang is old, so he can't tell if he's mistaken." Wen Rugui nodded. Dr. Wang's hair and beard were all white, and it was normal for his eyes to be hard to use. And he also said that the faces didn't match, and he guessed it based on the body shape and voice. There are too many people with similar body shapes and voices in the world, so he must have mistakenly recognized the person. This Aunt Lu was indeed bought by herself to serve Tao Rui. In the past, she was loyal to Tao Rui, so she would definitely not harm her. Immediately, he said, since divine Dr. Wang also relied on guessing, it is normal to admit the wrong person, so I will not pursue it. Before he finished speaking, a boy hurried in and shouted, "Uncle, it's not good. What are you making a fuss about? It's inappropriate," when Rugui scolded her with eyes wide open. The man knelt on the ground with a plop, pointed to the door and said, "A group of officers and soldiers came in. They said they were from Dali Temple. Someone reported poisoning. They have already gone to the grandmother's yard." "What?" When Rugui's face suddenly turned cold, and she started to walk away. Her eyes fell on the face of Sulayun, who had a dull expression, and she became convinced, Did you report the case? Yes, Sulayun replied calmly, Master Wen is so lustful that he has lost his mind. I can only turn to Dali Temple to seek justice. She looked at Daoyui with a half smile, it's also to give justice to Miss Daoyui. Taorui lowered her head with guilt, clenched her hands tightly, and trembled with fear. The master and uncle cherish their reputations the most. No matter who is found out who did this, the Wen family will be embarrassed in the end, and they can't run away. Thinking of what might happen to her, she felt regretful. If she had known that Sulayun was such a fearless master, she would never have provoked Qin Qiangshuang at this time. Before anyone could say anything, a middle-aged man led people into the courtyard and said loudly, "It's so lively here." Before Sulayun was surprised that Wang Xiuyi, the minister of Dali Temple, came in person, he saw Qin Zian following Wang Xiuyi. Sulayun was stunned for a moment before he stepped forward to salute Wang Xiuyi. Qin Zian and Kuliu also walked to Sulayun. Miss, when the servant and the second lady arrived at the door, they happened to meet Mr. Wang. Kuliu explained. When Rugui saw Wang Xiuyi and hurriedly saluted him, I have met Mr. Wang, but it was just a little housework, and I alarmed him. I am really ashamed. Get up. Mr. Wen is the pillar of the country. Since I have been handed down this official robe, I naturally do what I should do, Wang Xiuyi said politely. When Rugui was excited, she planned to take this path. If she could leave a good impression in front of Wang Xiuyi, she would be able to talk to him in the future. Maybe when she was in high school, Wang Xiuyi would show her kindness in person without having to move around by herself. He is very confident in his abilities. With this in mind, he straightened his collar and led Wang Xiuyi to sit down. Sir, please sit down. It doesn't matter, Wang Xiuyi refused and said with a solemn face, I heard that someone reported that Qin, the eldest grandma of the imperial family, poisoned Aunt Daoyui and the child in her belly. She used a medicinal material called return. Exactly, when Rugui responded humbly. Wang Xiuyi nodded, I have just dug 3 feet into the Qin family's yard and searched it, and found nothing. I heard that the nun next to my Aunt Daoyui reported this matter, so I came over to search. Is it convenient? Mamalu and Taorui's faces suddenly turned pale. Originally, the medicine should have been disposed of, but thinking that the medicine was very expensive, Grandma Lu became greedy for a moment. She wanted to wait for the matter to be settled and then sent her out to buy it in exchange for money to supplement her. Little did she expect that the official would come to search. She broke out in a cold sweat when she thought of the medicine hidden in her clothes box. She knew that no one could stop this search, so she quietly backed away, wanting to deal with it before anyone left. As soon as she retreated to the corner, she was stopped by Nanny Zhang. Where are Nanny Lu going in such a hurry? Mama Lu suddenly broke into a cold sweat, turned around stiffly, and smiled awkwardly. It's nothing, I just suddenly remembered that there was still millet porridge simmering on the stove, and wanted to go over and take a look. I'm good at cooking porridge. I keep an eye on our young lady's food. Why don't I go with you to have a look? Nanny Zhang took 2 steps forward and asked kindly. Mama Lu quickly shook her head, no, 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 where can I work with people from the Suhao mansion? It doesn't matter if I go back later. Mammy Zhang nodded and warned her kindly, if something happens, you must speak up. We are all Grandma's natal family, there is no need to be so different. Mama Lu smiled nonchalantly and did not answer. When Rugui gave her a hard look, you can't see anything. Wang Xiuyi looked at Aunt Lu meaningfully, raised his hand, and dozens of officials entered the backyard, searching every room inside and outside. Mama Lu was so nervous that she broke into a cold sweat, but she didn't dare to raise her hand to wipe it. Sir, I found it. A voice sounded, which frightened Grandma Lu. Wang Xiuyi took the things over and saw that they were indeed returning, so he asked, which house was this found from? Sir, they were found from the East Wing, the official replied. Mama Lu took a breath of cold air, and her body began to tremble uncontrollably. Wang Ziyi asked, "Who lives in the East Wing?" When Rugui kicked Nanny Lu in the thigh and shouted angrily, "What the is going on? Why don't you call me quickly?" Mama Lu didn't expect that he would suddenly get angry. She was unprepared and fell to the ground. She lay on the ground and couldn't get up for a long time. Tao Rui knew something was wrong, so she knelt down and begged for mercy. "Master, there must be something fishy about this matter. Aunt Lu will not harm me. Please be more careful. Auntie, your body is weak, you can't kneel down. It's not a pity to die as a servant, but your body is in great trouble." Aunt Lu came back to her senses, shook her head and cried. When Rugui also went to help Daoyui, "Master Wang is fair and honest, and he will definitely deal with it impartially. I will never let you be wronged. You get up first and hurt yourself carefully." Hearing this, Suleun almost laughed angrily. When Rugui was going to beat Chiu Tong to death just based on the lies made up by a few people before, but now that there are witnesses and physical evidence, he doesn't believe it anymore. This heart is really biased and has no limits. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 224. Chapter 224 Aunt Lu pleads guilty. Tao Rui knew in her heart that all her honors were as gentle as Gui's, and she immediately burst into tears. "If this matter is not investigated and the truth comes to light, I will not get up." "Are you relying on Mr. Wen's favor to confuse right and wrong?" Qin Zian sneered and threw the stolen goods in front of her. "The things were found in your yard, and you still want to mess around with Kaiang Shuang. Throw dirty water on your head. Since you don't believe the physical evidence, why not let Mr. Wang examine the witnesses you found and see what the matter is like?" Qin Zian was still out of breath after finishing speaking. She glanced at Suleun and said, "Leun, I'm going to see your aunt Kaiang Shuang. You should handle the matters outside as you should." "Second aunt, I know." Suleun nodded. Mama Lu closed her eyes in despair. When Rugui already knew in her heart that this was probably done by that naughty woman, and she secretly hated her for being so vicious and daring to harm her master and the Wen family's flesh and blood. He shouted angrily, "Hulu, you still haven't recruited someone from the real situation." When Hulu heard that he was going to be interrogated by the minister of Dali Temple, he was so frightened that he peed his pants. He was afraid that he would be beaten to death like Chiu Tong, so he hurriedly told the truth. The villain's younger brother has been spoiled since he was a child. He learned how to gamble and owed the gambling shop 132 taels of silver. The villain's father found the villain the day before yesterday and wanted to ask the villain to help his brother. "But the villain, I just got the monthly payment this year, which is only 1 tael of silver per month, how can I get so much money?" Yesterday, Grandma Lu found the villain and said that she could help him pay off his debts, but he had to accuse someone. The villain was not willing at first, but the person from the gambling shop said that if he couldn't pay the money today, the man's younger brother will have his hands and feet chopped off. Without his hands and feet, wouldn't he be disabled? The villain has no choice but to agree. He remembers the person according to the portrait that Grandma Lu gave him, and then waits for someone to come to the villain. You will all know what happens next. He cried bitterly and kowtowed, everything of the villain is true. The remaining 18 taels of silver are still hidden in the Kong hole where the villain sleeps. You can search for it. If the villain is lying, let the villain tell the truth, cut off your hands and feet, and give birth to it in the next life. Is that little statue still there? Wang Ziyi asked in a deep voice. Yes. Hulu quickly took out a folded piece of paper from his arms, opened it and handed it to Wang Ziyi. Everyone looked over and saw that it looked like Kaiyu Tong. Suleun sneered and asked Aunt Lu, "What else can you say?" "Old slave." "Mommy," Daoyui suddenly spoke up, interrupting Aunt Lu's words. She walked towards Aunt Lu step by step, with her back to everyone, her eyes looking a little crazy. Why did you do this? What did you do to me before? Are all good things fake? That is my first child. You know how much I look forward to him. Her voice was filled with a broken cry. If you have any difficulties, just tell me. Considering the fact that you have served me for so many years, I will plead with the uncle on your behalf to spare your life. Her back looked like a desperate person who had just been betrayed, but the fierceness in her eyes was terrifying. She has no choice now but to make Nanny Lu confess her crime first, and then pour dirty water on Qin Qiangshuang, and then think of ways to save Nanny Lu. If Aunt Lu refuses to plead guilty now, then Suleun will definitely continue to investigate. If it is not easy to find out that Qin Qiangshuang was born prematurely, she will not escape death. She can't let go of the wealth and honor she has at her fingertips. She never wants to live the same life as before. Thinking of this, she gritted her silver teeth and asked Aunt Lu in a low voice, "Tell me. Why did you do this? Mama Lu has been with her for so long, and she has no idea what she is thinking. She wanted to die, but her family was still there. If she really did that, Dao Yui would not let them go." She gritted her teeth, kowtowed, and then said, "This servant made a mistake at the moment. Grandma gave birth yesterday, and Miss Su came to make the decision for her. When Grandma was wrestling, only our aunt was there, and I was worried that Miss Su would do this. I wanted to embarrass her, and I was also worried that Grandma would be incited to attack our aunt, so I came up with this idea to strike first. You're such a slave, it's in vain that Taorui and I trust you so much, you're so stupid." When Rugui gritted her teeth and kicked her on the shoulder, knocking her to the ground. Daoyui felt relieved, covered her face with a handkerchief and cried loudly, "Mommy, you are confused. How can a reasonable person like my sister believe in what others say? Besides, Miss Su is a noble daughter of a noble family, and why would you embarrass me, an orphan with no roots?" He seemed to be extremely sad, staggering and almost falling to the ground. With quick eyesight and quick hands, when Rugui hurriedly stepped forward to help the person, holding her in her arms to comfort her distressedly. Taorui felt a little relieved now and let most of her strength rest on him, crying so hard. Suleun watched her acting and sneered in his heart. It was a good move to retreat in order to advance, but she miscalculated herself. Aunt Qiangshuang died so miserably in the last life, it must have been without the help of these two. Today, she will never let these two people have an easy time. The breeze blew, and Suleun suddenly smelled a hint of fragrance in the air. He carefully distinguished it and sneered in his heart. "When it's time to doze off, someone will bring you a pillow." She turned to Wang Ziyi and said, "This slave is so brave that he dares to do anything else if he dares to drug his master." Dr. Wang and Rong Wenpo are both well-known figures in the capital. Please make the decision to enter the house and search. Let's see if there's anything dirty. Miss Su had better stop it. When Rugui saw that Suleun was still reluctant, and looked at her with a cold look, "This is in our Wen family, not in your Suhao mansion. It's not Miss Su's turn here yet. A girl who has not yet left the government has the final say." Suleun didn't care about the threat in his tone and sneered, "Young Master Wen is serious. If Aunt Qiangshuang hadn't been bullied too hard, I wouldn't have come out like this. Don't be upset. Didn't you just say that? Don't you believe that Aunt Lu will harm Miss Daoyui? Master Wen has a kind heart, and I don't dare to take it lightly. If something is found in this yard in the future, and it is forced to be pinned on Aunt Qiangshuang and the people around her, and no one will make the decision for them, wouldn't it be, the fish on the chopping board is left to be slaughtered?" She looked at Wen Rugui with a half-smile. After all, isn't this a lesson from the past? Wen Rugui was speechless by what she said. She could only grit her teeth and said, "These two people were invited by your people. What if you take the opportunity to put something in Daoyui's house? We people in Suhao Mansion do things above board, but Mr. Wen is overly worried." Suleun laughed angrily at him, turned to Wang Xiaoyi and said, "Since Mr. Wen is worried, let Mr. Wang and Mr. Wen personally communicate with the two. Go in." End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 225. Chapter 225 A Capital Crime. Master Wang and Master Wen, Miss Dao Yui should be trustworthy, right? It's natural. As soon as Tao Rui finished speaking, she thought of the things in the room and bit the tip of her tongue. The pain was so painful that her already pale face turned pale. Tears filled her eyes, sparkling, and she looked like it was like crying when being bullied. Wen Rugui felt even more distressed when she saw it, and was angry at Suleun's aggressiveness. Wang Xiaoyi had already taken the lead towards the door, and Wen Rugui had no choice but to follow him first, thinking that he would settle the score with Suleun when nothing was found. But as soon as he stepped in, he saw Dr. Wang and Grandma Rong standing in front of the incense burner. They took some incense ashes and put them in their hands for inspection, with solemn expressions on their faces. His heart skipped a beat. Was there really anything else? Physician Wang and Rong Wenpo looked at each other, nodded slightly, and then walked up to Wang Xiaoyi holding the incense burner. Wang Xiaoyi only glanced at the brass auspicious beast three-legged incense burner and went out first. Seeing a few people come out, Dao Yui, who had been praying, saw what Rong Wenpo was holding, and her heart suddenly rose to her throat. Rong Wenpo took a look at Tao Rui and then said, "The incense that the girl ordered looks ordinary, but it contains a hint of Luotian. This spice has an aphrodisiac effect. If you smell this fragrance for a long time, you will be infertile." What? Tao Rui was startled. She only knew that this spice could aphrodisiac, but she really didn't know that it could be infertile. She looks gloomy. Is this the reason why she has been infertile? This kind of boudoir fun was made public, and when Rugui's face turned red. Suleun raised his eyebrows. If that's the case, what's going on with Miss Dao Yui's pregnancy? Tao Rui was even more frightened when the secret was revealed. She quickly shook her head. This incense was just put on in the past few days. I just thought it smelled good. I didn't know that there was, actually. Before he finished speaking, he started crying again. When Rugui hurriedly pulled her into his arms and comforted her, "I know it was definitely not you. It must be the slave who wants to harm you." This time, without Tao Rui's threat, Aunt Lu confessed on her own, this incense was indeed exchanged by the old slave. When the old slave saw that the lady was about to give birth, it was obviously our aunt who followed the uncle earlier, but there was no movement in the aunt's stomach. The servant was anxious, so he took the decision without authorization, hoping that his aunt would have a child so that he could have hope in the future. This is all done by the slave. Please punish the slave. Sister Kaiyutong, Sister Kaiyutong. Wake up! Chun Shui's cry suddenly started, waking up the people in the whole yard. Physician Wang hurried to have a look. Tao Rui pinched the handkerchief and covered her chest, silently praying that nothing would happen to Chiu Tong. If Chiu Tong died, they wouldn't be able to escape. You are a brave slave who dared to poison the young master to blame the mistress, and then used clever words and tricks to murder people. Suleun looked at Wang Xiaoyi, bowed slightly and asked respectfully, "May I ask Mr. Wang, what kind of crime should be punished for such a crime?" Wang Xiaoyi looked at her deeply. "A capital crime." Mama Lu suddenly collapsed on the ground, her shrewd eyes suddenly lost their luster and turned into dead fish eyes. "No," Dao Yui cried and knelt on the ground, pulling on Wen Rugui's robe and crying, "Please, for the sake of Aunt Lu who has served me for so many years, please beg for mercy on her behalf. She is not worthy of death. Oh, this slave first harmed the child in Miss Dao Yui's belly, and then instigated Mr. Wen to beat Kaiyutong to death. Miss Dao Yui still thinks that she is not worthy of death." Suleun sneered, "What's this for Miss Dao Yui? If you had given some of your compassion to others, you wouldn't have ended up like this." Okay, Okay, with the blessing of Bodhisattva, I am alive again, Chun Shui cried and said. Tao Rui breathed a sigh of relief, remembered what Suleun had just said, and asked, according to what Miss Su said, does the child in my belly still exist, so Grandma Lu doesn't have to die? Such a big thing happened. Even if Wen Rugui was willing to keep her, Mr. Wen and Mrs. Wen would not let her go. Therefore, she must have a child in her belly. Moreover, she only has one confidant, Nanny Lu, and her family has done a lot for her. If she fails to save Nanny Lu today, Qin Qiangshuang will have Suleun and Qin Xian to help her in the future, and she will be even more vulnerable. The situation is difficult. What's more, Grandma Liu's family members have a lot of things to do with them. If they retort, then I. Yes, when Rugui's eyes lit up and she looked at Dr. Wang and Yuzhong, I see that the bowl of bird's nest porridge Daoyui ate just now is white, not the red one she just cooked. Does that mean Daoyui's belly is white? Can the children inside be saved? Yuzhong saw Daoyui winking at him, but he didn't dare to accept it. After all, the minister of Dali Temple was also here. He looked away, stroking his beard and hesitating. Well, I just took a look at the bowl of bird's nest porridge. If this lady ate that bowl and the amount of bleeding was not much, there might be hope. Seeing that Yuzhong didn't answer, Divine Dr. Wang said directly. At this point, he frowned, however, that aphrodisiac incense also has the effect of promoting blood circulation, I'm afraid. Seeing him mention the aphrodisiac incense again, Wen Rugui's face didn't look good. Daoyui stood up and said to Wen Rugui, this is also the first time I'm pregnant. I panicked just now and thought the baby was dead when I saw blood. Why don't you let Dru take a look at it again? If the baby is still alive, everyone is happy here. Miss Daoyui is right. Suleun raised his eyebrows and pointed at Dr. Wang and Po Rongwen. These two are the ones who brought Aunt Qiangshuang back from the gate of hell. Po Rongwen is very good at treating women's diseases. Why not ask her to come and give Miss Daoyui a good look? She looked Daoyui up and down, and sneered, I see that Miss Daoyui is very weak, a little weaker than ordinary people who have had a miscarriage. You know, the future is long, even if the child is gone this time, Miss, you are still young, so there will always be a next time. But if the root cause of the disease is established, it will not be good to have children in the future. Upon hearing this, Wen Rugui immediately said, then please let me have a look. Uncle, it's better not to do it. Daoyui's nervous palms were numb, and her palms had long been soaked with cold sweat. After all, it was Miss Su who brought Dr. Wang and Po Rongwen. To put it bluntly, Daoyui is now the grass and trees are all soldiers. No one can believe it, but I am still the person I am used to be practical. How could Suleun not hear that there was something in her words? He also understood that there must be something fishy about the child in Tao Rui's belly. However, that's fine. If Dr. Wang were forced to see her today, even if he found out something, based on Wen Rugui's attitude towards her, he probably wouldn't do anything to her. It's better to let her make a big mistake and then eradicate it in one fell swoop. However, Aunt Qiangshuang has to make the final decision on these matters. After thinking about this, Suleun no longer stopped and allowed Daoyui and Yuzhong to enter the bedroom. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 226. Chapter 226, Hard to Persuade. As soon as she entered the door, Daoyui put away her weak face, and looked at Yuzhong with a stern face. When you go out later, you will tell everyone that the child in my belly is still there, but it has been affected by the medicine to some extent. Due to the influence of the disease, I was frightened again, and the fetus is unstable. It will be better to warm it up in the future, remember. Yes. Don't worry, Aunt, I know how to do it, Yu Zhong responded with a low eyebrow. When he thought of something, he asked carefully, if Mr. Wang wants to ask. He won't ask, Dao Yui said firmly, as long as the uncle doesn't pursue it, he won't ask again. Just as he was talking, there was suddenly a commotion outside, and then a deep middle-aged male voice sounded, I don't know that Mr. Wang is coming here, but I am late, and I still hope to see Hai Han. You're welcome, sir. Knowing that Mr. Wen was here, Dao Yui knew not to hesitate, so she took out a jade bracelet of good quality and handed it to Yu Zhong. There will be few people who will trouble you in the future, so take this first. As long as you do your best, money will be worth it, you don't have to worry about anything. It's just that I still need your help with one more thing. Auntie, just say it. Yu Zhong suddenly smiled broadly as he took the jade bracelet. Seeing that he was so greedy, Tao Rui felt relieved and whispered, it would be fine if Grandma Lu stays. If she is beaten and kicked out of the house, I hope you can give her a good diagnosis and treatment. Don't worry, Aunt, I will definitely take care of this for you. Yu Zhong's eyes flashed. Tao Rui listened carefully to the conversation outside and knew that she couldn't delay it any longer. She hurriedly adjusted her clothes and said, when you go out later, you mustn't reveal your fault, otherwise all of us will be dead. Don't worry, Auntie. Yu Zhong shrank his neck and said hurriedly. The door opened and Dao Yui went out first, throwing herself into Wen Rugui's arms with red eyes. Mr. Wen saw it and immediately scolded, it's inappropriate to hug in front of everyone. Dao Yui seemed to be frightened, and hurriedly withdrew from Wen Rugui's arms and stood still, tears hanging on her cheeks trying not to fall off. Greetings to the master. Dao Yui felt happy for a moment, and lost her sense, and asked the master, forgive me. Happy? Wen Rugui's eyes lit up, and she hurriedly pulled her and asked, you mean, the baby in your belly is okay? Tao Rui nodded shyly. Yu Zhong, however, had an inscrutable look on his face and stroked his goatee and said, it can't be said that it's okay. Although the effect of the medicine is small, it also played some role, causing the fetus to be unstable. In the future, you should rest and don't use warm and tonic food. If you have less, you can sit back and relax. Yes, it's natural. Wen Rugui responded quickly, grinning. Seeing that it was almost the same as what he thought, Suleun said with interest, Miss Dao Yui is indeed a lucky person. After such a hard time, the child is still stable and will be a person who will do great things in the future. In this case, congratulations to Wen. The master and Mr. Wen are together. After hearing this, Mr. Wen couldn't help but be happy. He replied cheerfully, then let's borrow Miss Su's good words. Suleun smiled and said, if Chiu Tong doesn't get treated, I'm afraid he won't be able to bear it anymore. If Mr. Wen has no other instructions, I'll take Chiu Tong back to Grandma Wen's yard first. Miss Su doesn't dislike our Wen family and is willing to be friends with us. This is her blessing. Mr. Wen said quickly, I have to thank Miss Su for helping me with today's matter. Here, take Miss Su to Qinglian courtyard. Physician Wang and Rong Wenpo also followed Suleun to Qinglian courtyard. Kai Tong was carried into the room. The sound spread into the main room. Qin Zian came out of the house with her child in her arms. Leun, how is the matter? Her voice was very soft and she pointed to the room to indicate that Qin Kaingshuang had rested. The delivery was dangerous that day, and she was already hurting her body. Now that something like this happened again, Qin Kaingshuang naturally couldn't hold on. Suleun briefly explained what happened. The more Qin Zian listened, the more serious the expression on his face became. If Kaingshuang still stays in the Wen family, something might happen to her. As he spoke, Qin Zian lowered her head and looked at the little face in the cloth bag with worry on her face. Suleun also had the same thought in his mind, I just don't know whether Aunt Kaingshuang is willing to leave. Today, Chen Shui comes to inform you in time, but what about next time? I will persuade her. Qin Zian knew how stubborn her sister was. As soon as she finished speaking, she heard crying from the bag. Zuzu, be good, don't cry anymore. Qin Zian held the child and patted it gently. The crying gradually became weaker. Looking at the sleeping child, Qin Zian and Suleun looked at each other and sighed. Mamalu was beaten 80 times, and when she was dragged out, the ground was stained with blood. When Yuzhong, who was outside Wen's house, saw this, he was too shocked to come forward. Soon, a maid ran out, and together with Yuzhong, they lifted up Nanny Lu and took her to the hospital. After noon, Qin Qiangshuang woke up. As soon as she opened her eyes and saw the two people in front of her, she stood up and said, "Sister, how is Kaiyutong?" Qin Zian poured her a cup of tea, saw her take a sip, and then said, "Don't worry, Divine Dr. Wang has checked it out. There is a lot of blood loss. She is fine. She can take good care of herself for a while." Qin Qiangshuang looked at Suleun, who was holding the child on one side, and said softly. Suleun took the child forward and said, "Aunt, Zuzu is very good. The wet nurse just fed her milk and she has already fallen asleep," she said, and put the child next to Qin Qiangshuang's pillow. Qin Qiangshuang looked sideways at her sleeping daughter, her heart felt soft, but also a little bitter. Then, how is her child doing? No one poisoned her, so she'll be fine. Suleun returned. "Sister," Qin Qiangshuang glanced at Suleun, "your name is Leun, right?" "Leun, thank you." Without Qin Zian and Suleun, Qin Qiangshuang knew very well that she would have died on the day of delivery. "Qiangshuang, let me ask you, what do you think of Wen Rugui?" Qin Zian looked at Qin Qiangshuang with a serious look. Qin Qiangshuang did not dare to look into Qin Zian's eyes and slowly lowered her head. "Sister, Rugui was just impulsive. He is very good to me." "Very good. Then where was he when you were about to die prematurely?" "When you framed Qiu Tong for poisoning, his face made me feel chilled when I saw it." "Qiangshuang, you were not so stupid before." Qin Zian looked at Qin Qiangshuang. She didn't understand why her sister suddenly lost her brain after not seeing her for several years. "Sister, even Qiangshuang did something wrong, don't blame him." Qin Qiangshuang was still trying to defend Wen Rugui, while Qin Zian pursed her lips tightly and was so angry that she didn't know what to say. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 227. Chapter 227 Enlishu. Seeing that the atmosphere was deadlocked, Suleun pulled Qin Zian and said, "Second aunt, you and Aunt Qiangshuang haven't seen each other for many years. If you have anything to say, just talk slowly. I'm not asking you to make any real choice, but for the safety of you and Zuzu, you should go home for the next few days." Qin Zian calmed down and spoke. Qin Qiangshuang's complexion changed and she shook her head. "Sister, my married daughter returned to her parents' home for confinement. What does this mean? If you don't want to go back to the Qin family, then go to the Sun family and I will take care of you. Anyway, it's not easy for Qiu Tong to take care of you now. You don't want anything to happen to Zuzu, right?" Qin Zian mentioned Zuzu, which made Qin Qiangshuang hesitate. Suleun then persuaded, "Yes, and Divine Dr. Wang said that Miss Qiutong will have to lie down for several days with her injuries. There is no caring person in this room. Are you relieved?" Divine Dr. Wang also said that because Zhu is a premature baby, we need to take good care of her. You are lying in bed now, so I'm afraid it won't be easy to take care of Zuzu. But Qin Qiangshuang looked at her daughter's face on the pillow, biting her lower lip, and was about to let go when she heard footsteps coming from outside the house. "Qiangshuang." When Rugui's voice came, Suleun and Qin Zian both changed their expressions. Qin Qiangshuang smiled and looked at Wen Rugui, who entered the house, Rugui, you came to see me. Looking at the two loving people in front of the bed, Qin Xian's face became even more ugly. Qian Shuang, I misunderstood you about Tao Rui. You also know that there are not many days until spring. I said some harsh words when I was anxious. Don't take it to heart. When Rugui took Qin Qian Shuang's hand and spoke softly, changing her previous attitude towards Suleun. Qin Qian Shuang was completely deceived by him and said softly, Husband, it's Qian Shuang who doesn't want you to worry too much. She looked at Wen Rugui, her eyes full of love. With that kind of infatuation, Suleun seemed to have seen himself in his previous life. No problem, speaking of Qian Shuang's delivery, I haven't thanked Mrs. Sun Er and Miss Su for their help. Speaking, Wen Rugui stood up and bowed respectfully to Qin Xian and Suleun. Qin Xian turned his head and did not respond. Suleun glanced at it for a few times, then suddenly raised his eyebrows and said, Young Master Wen, you're too polite. I'd like to call you uncle. After all, the situation was urgent at the time. Uncle, you were clearly at home and you didn't know why you were delayed. My second aunt and I naturally want to help. When Rugui's face stiffened for a moment, she glanced sideways at Qin Qian Shuang, and said with a smile, it was indeed delayed in the middle. Qian Shuang, you also know. I know. Qin Qian Shuang interrupted Wen Rugui without waiting for him to finish. A little sparkle appeared in her eyes, with a smile on her face. Rugui, go study, don't delay the spring. Wen Rugui couldn't stay any longer. When he heard this, he immediately said, Qian Shuang, if you have any questions, just remember to tell the servants. I will go to the study first. After saying that, he turned and left. A voice sounded outside the house, you take good care of grandma. If there is any problem again, I will take care of you. With such sonorous words, those who don't know how much Wen Rugui really cares about Qin Qian Shuang. And, you. Sister, Leun, I'm used to everyone in my house. If I go to other places, I'm afraid I'm still not used to it, so you don't have to worry about me. Qin Qian Shuang rejected Qin Xian and Suleun's proposal and stayed in the Wen mansion. Seeing that Qin Qian Shuang could not be persuaded, Qin Xian and Suleun did not force it. It's just that Qin Xian made a special trip back to the Qin family and sent a few trusted maids to the Wen mansion to take care of Qin Qian Shuang. The weather is getting warmer. Spring is also approaching quietly. In the capital city, tea houses and restaurants are full of scholars talking about the 4 books and 5 classics. Suchongzhong is also among them. I heard that several people in Liuhe were arrested by the government. They even dare to tie up their wives. How brave they are. It seems that Chunwei will have fewer competitors this time. Suchongzhong held the teacup and listened to the noise in his ears, smiling in agreement from time to time. Even Li Laohanlin's grandson can't participate. This year's spring festival is really weird. Brother Su, in the academy, you are on par with Mr. Li Rui. It seems that you must be the #1 scholar this year. Some people bowed their hands to Suchongzhong, flattering him. Suchongzhong smiled happily and said, then I'll lend you some good advice. Outside the restaurant, a carriage passed by quietly, heading towards Dali Temple. On the carriage, Suleun held Sun Jiaro's hand and said warmly, Mom, we have other ways. You don't have to go in person. You know, Mom knows you are worried about Mom, but Mom and your grandfather have already discussed this matter, so you don't have to worry. After a while, Dali Temple arrived. Knowing that the visitor was Sun Jiaro and Suleun, Wang Xiaoyi came out to welcome them. Mrs. Su, Miss Su. Wang Xiaoyi was murmuring in his heart when he met the two of them. What happened again? In recent times, he has met with Miss Su quite a lot. Master Wang, I am here today. The woman has something to inform Master Wang. Sun Jiaro's face was solemn and her tone was a bit lower. Wang Xiaoyi's brows moved slightly. Mrs. Su, please. Su Mansion. Su Changqing took a rest today and naturally stayed at Zanjiao courtyard. Just before Wenyayo and I were warm to each other for a while, we heard the noise of the boys. Master Marquis, my wife has brought something back. The boy knelt in front of Su Changqing, panicking and unable to tell what it was. Wenyayo stepped forward and took it from his hand, pretending to glance at it casually. Her face changed instantly. What is it? Su Changqing asked nonchalantly. For him, whatever Sun Gro sends back is not worthy of his concern. It will bore him instead. Wenyao's hands were trembling a little. Sulang, this, you better see it for yourself. Su Changqing opened his hands, and the piece of paper fell into his hands. He picked up a corner and looked at it casually. The next moment, Su Changqing stood up. What does Sun Gro mean? He Lishu? She is crazy. What Su Changqing was holding in his hand was a letter of peace and separation. The agreement has been written on it, and Sun Gro's fingerprints have been pressed. Wenyayo hurriedly stepped forward and supported Su Changqing. There was confusion in her eyes. Sulang, please calm down. There may be some misunderstanding in this. Honestly, why did Sun Gro write a letter of heli? Perhaps she discovered something? But if the relationship between her and Su Changqing was really discovered, according to the temperament of the Sun family, would they only produce a letter of divorce? For some reason, Wenyao's heart beat fast and she felt uneasy. It seems like something bad is about to happen. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 228. Chapter 228. You have to sign sooner or later. Misunderstanding? I would like to ask her what kind of misunderstanding it is. Su Changqing held He Li's book in his hands and walked out angrily. Karen had not even taken a few steps out of the yard when the housekeeper came running from a short distance away. Master Ho, it's not good, the people from Dali Temple are here. People from Dali Temple are here, why are you so worried? Su Changqing glared at the housekeeper, not realizing the seriousness of the matter. Thought it was just a visit from a colleague. Sir, here is Mr. Su, long time no see. The visitor has a black beard hanging on his chin, round eyes, and a strong build. At first glance, he looks more like a military general than a civil official. Seeing the other party, Su Changqing blinked and suddenly realized something was wrong. Hong Yang, what are you doing here? Seeing Su Changqing's alert gaze, Hong Yang grinned. Master Su, don't panic, I'm not here to arrest you. What do you mean? Hong Yang ignored Su Changqing and waved to the guards behind him, come here, arrest Wenyayo. At the entrance of the courtyard, Wenyao's feet felt weak as soon as he heard this. By the time the guards came forward to lift her up, tears were already falling from the corners of Wenyao's eyes. Master Ho, save me. Hong Yang, I order you to let her go. Master Su, please forgive me for being unable to obey my order. Someone reported that Wenyayo is the daughter of the guilty minister. Master Su should think about how to clear up the relationship. Take her away. Hong Yang sneered, waved his hand, and left with Wenyayo. Mrs. Su rushed over in a hurry and only saw a few figures walking away. What the happened? She was leaning on a cane and her voice was trembling. The whole Su family was panicked. It is not a good thing to take in the daughter of a guilty minister. For a while, Su Changqing even forgot about the letter and the letter. And Li Shu were thrown to the ground. Fortunately, Nanny Zhao had sharp eyes and saw it and picked it up. Seeing the handwriting on it, Aunt Zhao's eyes widened a bit. Old madam, this is madam's handwriting. She handed the He Li Shu to Mrs. Su. Su Changqing is still racking her brains, wondering why Wenyao's identity was exposed. Master Ho, what's going on with Li Shu? Mother, now is not the time to talk about this. Su Changqing pulled the book away and tore it open with his hands. How can you come up with something like this? I don't think this matter has anything to do with Sun Gro. Mrs. Su said in a deep voice. Things have happened, and it is useless to investigate the reasons. What matters now is how to clear the relationship between the Su family and Wen Yao. Mother, the child in Yun Niang's belly. You shut up. Mrs. Su interrupted Su Changqing's words loudly. There were many unsuspecting servants around. Was he hoping that something would happen to the Su family? Why did she raise such a stupid son? Mrs. Su glanced at Nanny Zhao and the housekeeper. The two reacted quickly and immediately called out the servants around them. What are you doing standing there stupidly? Why don't you go find Changjing quickly? Mother, what's the use of looking for her? Su Changqing hasn't come back to her senses yet. Mrs. Su took a deep breath and said, Wen Yao was Lu Hong's distant cousin. If you didn't go to Lu Hong to discuss it, who else would you go to? Su Changqing was startled. My son forgot about it. Looking at Su Changqing's figure leaving quickly, Madame Su raised her forehead and said, Mother Zhao, go prepare the car while I go to the Sun mansion. Yes, old lady. Soon, the carriage set off from Su mansion and drove to Sun's house. Arrived at the door of Sun mansion, Aunt Zhao stepped forward and knocked on the door. Who is it? The gatekeeper opened the door and took a look, knowing in his mind, who are you? The old lady of the Su family specially came to visit General Sunday. Mama Zhao was respectful and reported to her family. The gatekeeper blinked and opened the door. Young man, please go ahead and let me know. Lao Yang hurried over and saw Mrs. Su next to Grandma Zhao. He hurriedly stepped forward and said, Mrs. Su, what brought you here? I haven't seen you here during the Chinese New Year. The corners of Mrs. Su's mouth were slightly stiff, and Lao Yang's words were clearly sarcastic. Come in quickly, my master is waiting for you in the main hall. Lao Yang smiled and walked ahead to lead the way for Mrs. Su. In the main hall, Sun Xiao took a sip of tea. His posture was bold and majestic. Sir, Mrs. Su is here. Lao Yang's voice came. Sun Xiao looked up and saw Mrs. Su coming in supported by Aunt Zhao. My father-in-law, long time no see. Mrs. Su was the first to speak, and then coughed. I have been in poor health before, but now I feel better. I thought I would like to come and see you. You are welcome. Sun Xiao gave Mrs. Su a cold look and ordered tea to be served. Sitting in her seat, Mrs. Su looked around, but did not see Sun Xiao speak. After a moment of silence, she had no choice but to speak again. Why don't you see Jiro? You said that the couple had a quarrel over something trivial, so they went back to their parents' house, and outsiders saw it? How ugly. I think it should have been like this a long time ago. There is no need to say these polite words between us. I sent the letter of separation and departure. Come now, has Su Changqing signed it? My father-in-law, look at what you said, it's just a small quarrel, why do you want to get divorced? Mrs. Su looked embarrassed and felt uneasy. Sun Xiao chuckled, what you said is wrong. If it was really a small quarrel, why would there be any need for reconciliation? I don't need to explain clearly what your Su family has done, right? Today, if you come to plead for mercy, please come back. Lao Yang, see you off. My father-in-law. Mrs. Su stood up and wanted to step forward and hold Sun Xiao back. But Lao Yang moved faster than her and easily blocked her steps. Mrs. Su, please come this way. My father-in-law, we can talk to you about anything we have to say, you see. Mrs. Su still wanted to fight for it, but it was of no use. She and Nanny Zhao were invited out by Lao Yang. Outside the door, a carriage stopped. Old lady, it's the madam and the young lady. Mama Zhao saw the two people coming down and hurriedly arrived. Mrs. Su quickly looked back and saw that it was indeed Suleun and Sun Gro. Gro. Sulayun and Sun Gro were not surprised when they heard Mrsu's voice. The soldiers stepped forward to stand in front of the two of them and stopped Mrsu. Gro, something happened at home, please go back and take a look. Old madam, haven't you seen that Enlishu? Sun Gro met Mrsu's eyes and suddenly thought of something. I think Su Changqing might have torn that Enlishu apart, but it doesn't matter, this Lishu, you have to sign both in the morning and in the evening. Sun Gro smiled implicitly. Sulayun nodded with Mrsu and walked inside with Sun Gro. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 229. Chapter 229, Chaos. Stop. Mrsu was so angry that her hands were trembling, and she could no longer hold the crutches steadily. Sulayun and Sun Gro's postures were clearly mocking her. Mom, you go in first. Sulayun smiled. Seeing this, Sun Gro walked in without hesitation. Sulayun was left alone and looked at Mrsu. Grandma, there's something going on at home. What's the point of coming to Sun's house? Sulayun asked, with undisguised sarcasm in his eyes. Mrsu took a deep breath and was supported by Aunt Zhao before she managed to stand still. She looked at Sulayun angrily. Is this your attitude when talking to your elders? Grandma, instead of arguing with me about this, why don't you go back and think about how to protect the Su family? If something happens to the Su family, you won't be able to escape the relationship. Mrsu stared at Sulayun closely and spoke every word with sonorous force. Sulayun's face froze slightly, as if Madame Su had touched on a painful point. Now you know, if the Sun family doesn't want to see anything happen to you, they must help us. Mrsu was very happy when she saw Sulayun's expression. Sure enough, he is still young and has not even understood the situation yet. Thinking about it, Mrsu took another step towards Sun's mansion. She had forgotten about this incident just now. That old guy Sun Shao couldn't possibly watch something happen to his daughter and grandson, right? Grandma, Sulayun's voice interrupted Mrsu's steps. Do you know the word merit is worth it? The expression on Sulayun's face has changed. His face is calm and there is no hint of panic. What's the meaning? Mrsu's heart seemed to have stopped beating for a moment, and she looked at Sulayun solemnly. But there was no answer. Sulayun glanced at her and said, Grandma, it's better to go back quickly. After saying that, he turned around and entered the door. The door of Sun Mansion was slowly closed in front of Mrsu. Mrsu touched her chest and her tone was a little more urgent, go back quickly. Before she even got off the carriage, Nanny Zhao hurriedly said, Old madam, it's the clan leader and several elders who are here. Mrsu was shocked and was helped out of the carriage by Aunt Zhao. As soon as he raised his eyes, he saw the clan chiefs and elders going to the mansion. She couldn't help but feel excited. Clan chief, elders, why are you here? Mrsu stepped forward and said. Is Su Changqing here? The patriarch's face was cold, no longer as gentle as in the past. Obviously, something happened. Mrsu was drumming in her heart and hesitated. Changqing has gone out. If anything happens to the clan leader, he will tell me the same thing. Msu Yang, when we saw you orphans and widowed mothers, we kindly helped you. Now it's better. Is this how you repay us? You raise a daughter of a criminal minister in your house. You think our family's life is too good. Is it intentional? The patriarch scolded sternly, and several elders also looked angry. They are trying to kill the 9 tribes. Madame Su said hurriedly, Chief, you have misunderstood. We don't know about this either. You don't know, the patriarch snorted coldly, This matter has already been brought to Dali Temple, and you still say you don't know. Chief, Dali Temple has indeed come to arrest someone, but before the matter is found out, Chang Qing has already left. We will definitely handle this matter. Mrso kept herself low and persuaded her, and finally appeased the clan leader and several elders. After the others were sent away, Mrso looked extremely ugly. Where did this go wrong? Sun Gro and Suleun's attitude today was completely undisguised. They must have told the story about Wen Yao. But how did these two people know? Mrso frowned and said, Mother Zhao, go and call Mother Zhong. Old madam, do you suspect that there is something wrong with Aunt Zhong? Mama Zhao asked carefully, observing Mrso's expression from time to time. Mrso sat in her seat, her brows furrowed, and she couldn't hide her anxiety. Call the people here first. Yes. Mama Zhao quickly called Aunt Zhong over. This slave has seen the old lady. Mother Zhong knelt in front of her, her head lowered, and she did not dare to say anything. She naturally saw the scene where Wen Yao was taken away at Zanjiuiwen. Now that Mrso called me again, I felt a little panicked. You have been with Chang Qing for many years. What do you think about Wen Yao? Mrso glanced at Aunt Zhong and asked coldly. Mother Zhong did not dare to raise her head and replied hurriedly, Old madam, if it weren't for today, I would have never known Mrs. Wen's life experience. Chang Qing asked you to take care of me, didn't you tell me? Mrso continued to ask. The old lady is aware that the Marquis only said that Mrs. Wen was a guest and that she wanted to take good care of her. He didn't say much else. Mother Zhong's answer satisfied Mrso. She glanced at Aunt Zhao and said, Don't let Aunt Zhong get up yet. You servant, just get up. Mother Zhong stood up quickly and stood aside with her body curled up. Mrso thought of something. Where are Su Yuking and Su Changzhong? Master Su left the house early in the morning, but Miss Su is still at Zanjiu Yard. Call these two people here too. If something happens to Wen Yao, I'm afraid it will be difficult to save these two people. Mrso sighed heavily. After all, they are her grandchildren. If they really die without saving them, Mrso can't stand it. What's more, even if she doesn't save him, Su Changqing can't help him. At this time, Lu Mansion. Lu Hong also stayed at home. Upon learning of Su Changqing's intention, Su Changjing immediately said, Brother, at this time, you can't drag us into the water. What you said was not the idea you gave me at the beginning. Su Changqing knew that Su Changjing wanted to clear up the relationship. After all, Su Changjing was her married daughter. If something happened to the Su family, it would not affect the Lu family. But Wen Yao's identity was Lu Hong's distant cousin. If this were said out loud, the Lu family would not be able to hide. Lu Hong understood this and said in a deep voice, I will go to Dali Temple to check the situation regarding this matter. Brother, Changjing, don't mess up your position and let others grasp the situation in vain. I knew you were a good person, Lu Hong, so I'll leave this to you. As soon as Su Changqing heard this, he smiled widely. With Lu Hong's help, he felt more confident. Su Changjing frowned, but said nothing and sent Lu Hong out of the house. Turning around and seeing Su Changqing, she frowned again. Brother, does Sun Gro know about this? Of course she doesn't. Su Changqing was about to say that Sun Gro should not know, but suddenly thought of what Mrso said before going out, and she was shocked. Mother said that this matter may have something to do with Sun Gro. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 230. Chapter 230 Can't Help. Does she know about Brother Yu and Wen Yao? Su Changjing's expression changed drastically. She found it interesting to bring Wen Yao to the Su family. She has always looked down on Sun Gro, but she was always superior to others because she was from a better background, and she also prevented her from being with Lu Hong. Su Changjing has held a grudge for this incident alone for many years. I have kept this secret for so many years, how could she suddenly know about it? Su Changqing still has some indescribable confidence. In his opinion, if Sun Gro was really so smart, he should have discovered it long ago. Why did he wait until now? What's more, if Sun Gro really knew, how could she be so calm? Su Changjing thought of one person, brother, Sun Gro doesn't know, but that Suleun is very evil. Could she have discovered it? These words made Su Changqing stunned. He rarely looked at Suleun directly. Although some strange things always happened since she came back, in Su Changqing's view, it was just a coincidence. But when you think about it carefully, it is full of weirdness. What if she finds out? Su Changqing didn't dare to think about it. If Suleun discovers something and investigates further, will the things he did before also be found out? Su Changqing's fingers trembled slightly. In the first few years of his marriage to Sun Gro, he did a lot of things based on his status in the Sun family. Later, he gradually learned to be smart and did not leave any traces. If someone is really willing to investigate, I'm afraid they can find something. The two brothers and sisters looked at each other with the same fear on their faces. Dali Temple. Wen Yao was imprisoned. She stood in front of the cell door with her hair in a messy bun. Brother, I'm pregnant, could you please help me and change me to a clean cell? Wen Yao knew that the more trouble there was, the more unreasonable it would be. So she was very calm along the way and didn't do anything unnecessary. The jailer on the side looked sideways at her and saw that she had tears in her eyes and a big belly, which made her feel a little unbearable. This is Mr. Hong's arrangement, I can't help you. Brother, I know this is the arrangement of adults. But I am an adult and it doesn't matter. I can't let my child suffer, right? As he spoke, Wen Yao took out a hosta from his sleeve and handed it to the jailer. Muttered in his mouth, just be kind enough to help me and say something for me. Even if you fail, I won't blame you. Seeing the hosta, the jailer became even more hesitant. The next moment, he took the hosta and whispered, let me help you try it. Thank you, brother. Looking at the jailer walking away, Wen Yao took a deep breath and glanced at the cell with great disgust. Even though the Wen family was imprisoned 20 years ago, Wen Yao did not suffer for a few days. Later, she met Su Changqing and enjoyed life under his protection for so many years. She had long been suffering from ailments. How could she endure the prison cell? The clutter inside. Wen Yao was waiting for the jailer to come back, while her heart was twisting. Who revealed her identity? The first person that appeared in Wen Yao's mind was naturally Sun Gro. As for who is most likely to deal with her, I can't think of anyone other than Sun Gro. Wen Yao frowned lightly. If it was really Sun Gro, did she know about her relationship with Su Changqing? Before he could figure it out, the jailer came back. The jailer handed back the hosta in his hand. I can't help with this matter. Brother, take it. Wen Yao didn't get it back. The jailer naturally felt a little guilty after collecting the things and failing to do anything, so he found a broom, cleaned the cell, and replaced Wen Yao with a new pile of straw. Outside the prison, Dali Temple was extremely busy. The things Sun Gro brought were not only Wen Yao's, but also evidence about Su Changqing's abuse of power. Wang Xiaoyi and Hong Yang looked through the evidence and couldn't help but sigh. I'm afraid Su Changqing didn't expect that Xiao He would succeed or lose Xiao He. Master Wang, if Sun exposed Su Changqing, wouldn't he be worried that his children would be affected? Hong Yang asked. In the Dacian dynasty, a wife who reported her husband would not go to jail for it. But it will definitely have an impact on children. Wang Xiaoyi shook his head, have you forgotten about the Sun family? What's more, among the younger generation nowadays, Su Ye is a rare military general. Even if the Su family disappears, Suye's fame will not be reduced by half. It's true that the Turks were defeated a few days ago, and the Holy One is very happy. Hongyang echoed in a rough voice. In this battle alone, Suye was safe. Sir, Mr. Lu Hong, the censor of the Metropolitan Procuratorate, wants to see you. Lu Hong. Wang Ziyi and Hongyang looked at each other. I understand, let Mr. Lu Hong wait for me in the side hall. Master Wang, this Master Lu is Suchanking's brother-in-law. It's definitely not a coincidence that he's here at this time. Hongyang reminded. Wang Ziyi nodded. I know, you should sort out these evidences, and when I see Lu Hong, we can go to the palace to pay homage to the Holy Master. I understand. In the side hall, Lu Hong was sitting on a wooden chair with a relaxed expression, gently flipping the lid of the teacup. As soon as Wang Ziyi entered the room and saw Lu Hong's expression, a smile appeared on his face. Mr. Lu, I've been waiting for a long time. Mr. Wang, you're welcome. Lu just sat down. They are both human beings, and they can tell each other's thoughts just by looking at each other. When Wang Ziyi sat down, Lu Hong said calmly, I heard that Mr. Wang arrested a descendant of the Wen family. Master Lu, let's open the window and speak frankly. That Wen Yao was arrested from the Su family. If you want to say something to exonerate her, I still want to persuade you. Master Lu has just become it would be better for the censor of the Metropolitan Procuratorate to distance himself from these matters. Master Wang has misunderstood. Lu came here because this is indeed a misunderstanding. Faced with Wang Ziyi's direct attack, Lu Hong seemed to be at ease with his skills without changing his expression. Wang Ziyi glanced at it a few times and asked, how do you say this? Wen Yao is really Lu's distant cousin. If Mr. Wang doesn't believe it, you can go and investigate. As for other things, it has nothing to do with Lu. Lu Hong's expression was calm, which made Wang Ziyi stunned for a moment. Is there really something wrong with this? But Sun Gro remembered every piece of evidence clearly. Thinking of Lu Hong's last words, Wang Ziyi came back to his senses and said with a smile, I will enter the palace soon. How about Sir Lu and me go to the emperor to talk about this matter? Master Wang doesn't mind. Lu will enter the palace with Master Wang. With the evidence compiled, Wang Ziyi and Lu Hong headed towards the palace. The two of them entered the palace gate. Behind them, Sidhu Dankai also stood in front of the palace gate with his cloth bag. The guard raised his spear to stop him. Who is coming? Where is the palace card? Sidhu Dankai looked confused and asked, Palace card? She didn't take anything with her when she came out, not to mention that she was robbed once on the way. Now the cloth bag contains only some pastries from Sun Jiashun. End of this chapter.